Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
Hello, and you are very welcome to this week's episode of Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. I hope you're safe and well as you tune in to us this week. We have a very interesting lineup for you this week. We'll be checking in on the new biodiversity action plan in County Laois, and we'll also be learning about the efforts to make one of Tullamore's largest employers a sustainable and environmentally minded business. But we are in the autumn, it is September, and the budget is a matter of weeks away. And many groups across the country, lobby groups, advisors, political parties, local councillors, everyone has their say on what they think the government should be doing in Budget 2026. Well, one of the most prominent groups to have put forward their thoughts on the matter is the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council. And Niall Connery from the Fiscal Advisory Council joins us now to, well, Niall, to put forward your speak and to see what it is that you're advising the government on. You're very welcome to Let's Go Green.
Thanks very much for having me.
So, Niall, now I know that the advice that's been offered on behalf of yourselves, you know, it's quite detailed, and we won't, in the course of a radio interview, be able to go into it. But in broad strokes, what is the Fiscal Advisory Council suggesting the government do in Budget 2026?
So I suppose how we would frame our advice to the government would be that, you know, the economy is still performing really well. So employment is at a record high. We're still creating lots of new jobs, and consumer spending is still strong. So all the evidence that we have still suggests the Irish economy is still performing at a really strong level. And to us, that means that the economy doesn't really require massive support from budgetary policy. So we would think that the time that the government should step in with large increases in spending or with tax cuts is when the economy is weak. That's really when you want budgetary policy to be providing support when it's really needed. So we don't really think this is a great time to be introducing a really large package of budgetary measures, be it spending increases or tax cuts. Now, that's not to say that there can't be individual issues that the government addresses. It just means that they need to make choices and make priorities between the different areas that they want to address. So, you know, they have to make priorities and choose, you know, maybe if they want to do more in one area, that means that they need to do less in another area.
Now, of course, you know, we hear the logic of the argument, but there will be many people who feel the pressures of the economy financially there. So it can be hard to hear that the economy is in a very good place, and yet many of us are struggling to make ends meet.
Absolutely. And like, it's always the case that, you know, we're looking at the economy in a kind of an overall bird's eye view of it. But within that, there's naturally going to be, you know, some people that are doing extremely well in some of the multinational sectors that pay exceptionally high wages. And then there's other people that are really struggling with the cost of living that they're currently experiencing. Like we even saw last week, the ESRI showing that like child poverty levels are at a very high rate in Ireland, reasonably comparable to what would have been the case during the financial crisis. So we'd certainly recognise that. I think what that means for the budget or for policy in general is that if you think certain groups of society merit support or require support, well, you can do that. But it just means that you might need to be a bit more targeted in your approach. So, you know, if you're thinking about something like child poverty, maybe you don't need to increase child benefits for everyone, but maybe you need to introduce a second tier that's only applicable to lower income households or people that are particularly struggling with the cost of living at present, rather than some of the universal supports we've seen recently, you know, where every citizen gets money back on their electricity, not just the people that actually require it.
In recent years, governments have put aside money, you know, the so-called rainy day fund. We have the climate action fund, and a lot of money has been pumped into that. And I know that as I understand it, at least, the Fiscal Advisory Council is advising on the climate side of things that the government keeps putting money into that fund. Does that include spending it? Or is it that we're building it up?
Yeah, so the major fund that is being built up is what's called the Future Ireland Fund. And the plan is that that money will be used to offset the costs of an ageing population in future decades. And the plan there is to not really draw down and use those funds until the 2040s when we start to feel the largest impacts of our ageing population. For the other fund, the Infrastructure, Climate and Nature funds that you reference, there are already proposals to use some of that funding starting from 2026. So the government is simultaneously putting money into the funds that it is getting from these exceptional corporation tax receipts that we're receiving. But at the same time, it will be using some of those funds to spend on, the large investment projects that the government has already announced, and giving money to the EirGrid and ESB to improve our electricity network and renewable power. So it kind of is doing both things at the same time, as such.
And can we I can even things like retrofitting homes. We all know that needs to be done, but unfortunately, it's actually quite expensive as an individual. So what can the government do with this fund? What's the advisory council suggesting that it is done with it for the benefit of, well, obviously dealing with climate action, but the population at the end of the day?
Yeah, so currently with retrofits, there are some grant schemes there in place, and that is assisting some people in a reasonably targeted way to retrofit their homes. Now, we are slightly behind what our targets would have been in terms of the rate of adoption of that out to 2030. But I think one of the key challenges, particularly on something like retrofits, is just getting the workers. So I think anyone that has had experience of actually trying to get work done on their home recently, it is quite difficult to get people, right? It does seem like the construction sector is operating pretty much flat out. So that is one of the challenges that we have, is even if we have the ambition and we have the funding to do some of these things, do we actually have sufficient construction sector capacity? Do we have enough workers? Do we have enough firms that can actually carry out this work? So, this is the opposite of the problem Ireland would have had in the 70s and 80s, where we had lots of unemployed people with very little money. Now we kind of have the opposite. We have lots of money, but not necessarily the workers to carry out all the work we want to do. So one short-term way around that is to kind of prioritize things that don't require lots of labor, don't require lots of workers. So something that the council would have advocated for previously was that one avenue we could go down is to more heavily subsidize electric vehicles. Yeah. So the benefit of electric vehicles is they're not produced in Ireland. We don't build them here. So they don't require additional workers to produce them. They're going to be produced abroad and they're going to be imported into Ireland. So they don't have any requirement for domestic labour. So if we were to say scale up the extent of the grants, which have were reduced in 2023, and as a result, adoption has kind of slowed down a little bit. If we were to increase the grants that are available in that area, that could help meet our climate targets, while also not putting additional pressure on the construction sector that already seems to be kind of operating at capacity.
On that, we've been talking about the need for Ireland to have more electric vehicles on the roads, or, more retrofitted homes, more solar panels. And yet the grants were reduced, for electric vehicles. There is a concern in Budget 2026 that the grant will be reduced again, which makes it more difficult for people to actually make that change, despite the fact that they want to do that. And I know you're not the government, but can you, from an economic perspective, can you explain that for us? Why would the grants be reduced? Because it seems illogical.
I think the rationale that has been put forward is that they're transferring their resources from grants to people to actually buy the electric vehicles and putting more money into developing the charging infrastructure. So spending more money on developing public charging spaces around the country, which Ireland is a long way behind, certainly compared to Scandinavia or any of the countries that have done a very good job very quickly on this. So I think that is the rationale that will be put forward. From a basic economic point of view, you would normally say you should tax things heavily that you think are bad, and you should try and subsidize things that are good. So typically that would mean, finding subsidies for electric vehicles and taxing combustion engine vehicles that are emitting carbon. So that would be the basic economic principle. And like looking at the rate of adoption, the rate of sales of electric vehicles, you can certainly see that there has been a moderation or a slowdown in their take-up in the last couple of years, which I suppose is to be expected when they are becoming more costly to the individual when the grant is reduced.
What's your take on, there was conversation earlier in this year around a scrappage scheme that effectively we'd be paid to trade in our diesel or petrol engine vehicle for an electric one?
Yeah, there could be some logic to that. I'd be fairly indifferent about whether it's a scrappage scheme for existing vehicles or whether it's a grant scheme for the new electric vehicles. Like in essence, they should work the same way. The only way the scrappage scheme would significantly, change the results would be obviously it's only available to people that have an existing car that they're getting rid of, as opposed to someone purchasing a new car. But in theory, they should work in reasonably similar ways.
Now, we're talking because the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council, yourself and your colleagues, you've put forward your budget submission for Budget 2026. For many years, the looming deadline of 2030 has been on the horizon. We're getting very close to that now. If we don't meet our climate targets, we run the risk of it costing us a lot of money. So what is the council's take on the situation as it stands?
Yeah, so on kind of current trajectory and based on the projections we have from the likes of the Environmental Protection Agency and the SEAI, all suggest that Ireland is going to miss its climate objectives by 2030 quite substantially. So we've committed to reducing our emissions by about 50% by 2030, and all suggestions are that we're not going to make that target. In terms of what the financial costs directly to the Exchequer are, ourselves and the Climate Change Advisory Council did a piece of work earlier this year where we tried to estimate what those costs would be. So essentially how this would work is we would have to buy permits or buy, permits to emit carbon from countries that are overperforming. So some countries are doing even better than what they were required to do by 2030. So we estimate there's a lot of uncertainty over these estimates. It partially depends on how we perform. It partially depends on what the price is of these credits based on how other countries perform also. But the range of estimates we came up with was somewhere between 8 and 26 billion euro. So an extraordinarily large amount of money. So, somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 euro per citizen, just in kind of fines or compliance costs for not meeting our own climate targets. So while there's clearly benefits to meeting your climate objectives in terms of cleaner air, better health outcomes that people typically have, and simply just transitioning to what's probably going to be inevitable anyway, there's a clear financial imperative to doing this as well from the government's point of view.
It's that kind of money. It is staggering, isn't it?
It is extraordinary, and it's not just a one-off cost either. So you can think of if Ireland misses its targets in 2030, there's every chance you're going to miss your targets in 2035 and 2040 also. So it's not like this is just some sort of one-off cost that we wouldn't face again into the future. It's likely that we would have further costs in the following years as well. In business, sometimes people say you need to spend money to make money. This might be a case where the government needs to spend money in order to defray costs that would otherwise come from this non-compliance.
And also, if we don't spend this money on making us a more climate change resilient economy, we're going to be facing more storms, like warmer temperatures, wetter weather. We're going to have the costs that come along with that too.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is not in a vacuum. So, we've done some work previously on what the impacts on various sectors would be, and one issue that we're going to have is government revenue is going to fall as we kind of transition from fossil fuels to cleaner energy. And naturally, these are fossil fuels are pretty heavily taxed in Ireland, like in most countries. So you will have a job to do to replace those revenues as we do transition to renewable power. But more generally, you can clearly see we're already seeing evidence of more intensity of storms and extreme weather events. So there's going to be some physical costs that you're going to face on a year-to-year basis, but you can try and offset some of those by building resilience in some of the public spaces that we have.
Well, on that sobering start to this week's episode of Let's Go Green, Niall, we might invite you back after the budget to give your take on what is actually going to be spent and what has been allocated, if that's all right with you.
That sounds good. Thanks very much.
Niall Conroy of the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council, thank you very much for joining us on Let's Go Green. We will be back in a few moments' time after we pay some bills.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Well, would you like to get involved in shaping how County Laois puts together its new biodiversity action plan? Well, if the answer to that question is yes, stay tuned. We're joined now by Laois County Council Biodiversity Officer Lisa Doyle. Lisa, you're very welcome back to Let's Go Green.
Thank you, Aisling. Happy to be here.
So, Lisa, tell us about this plan in a nutshell to begin with. What exactly is a biodiversity action plan?
It's a plan for County Laois whereby we can attempt to improve biodiversity across all sectors and regions. And it's a requirement under the 4th National Biodiversity Action Plan, which has a whole of Ireland, whole of government approach. And the deadline to create and publish these plans is end of 2026.
So each county council has to put one of these together. So you're now looking for the public to get involved. Like, what exactly are you looking for? How can people speak to you about it?
Yes, so we've started a public engagement period which will run till the end of October. And we're going to go out across Laois to a number of places, and we invite all and sundry to come and speak with us. And it'll be an informative discussion on the biodiversity of Laois, the threats, the opportunities that occur within Laois. And then we'll have some breakout sessions where people can, generate ideas on where an action could be created as part of the plan.
And what kind of actions might be included in a plan? Give us an idea of what it might look like.
Yes, well, we'd love collaborating, essentially, because we get more done when more people are on board. So we're quite keen to collaborate with community groups and with organisations. So we've got Law Pro, Nor Vision and Laois, collaborating with those on improving river water quality. We collaborate with Teagasc and with farmers and with our own internal stakeholders. And we collaborate with the Tidy Towns and in the educational sector. So biodiversity, it is everywhere and it should be everywhere and it needs to be improved. So if anyone has an interest or an idea, we'd come to the table, even creating wildflower meadows, putting in ponds, improving hedgerow management. They're all important topics that occur in Laois.
Might it be something like whether or not the council leaves the roundabouts to go to seed in the month of May? Or, will the members of the public be able to see these things in action once it's up and running?
Oh, absolutely. We do try to promote where we carry out works on our own land for nature. In Portlaoise, we have a pollinator-friendly roundabout scheme that's been going on the last few years. And I think anyone who's travelled to Portlaoise, you can really see the tagline, "A town in a garden," and it's very well received. And it becomes a norm. And it's a bit of a shock when you go to another town and it may not be there. So it's that educational and awareness aspect where we increase the connection to nature through various means. And, you don't know what you need to protect or how important it is unless you know what's there and how important it is.
And I'm sure, Lisa, initially, a number of years ago, when someone somewhere came up with the idea of, letting roundabouts go to seed. As an example, it was probably thought as being a bit out there or a bit daft. But now we've educated ourselves. We see the benefit, the need for things like this to improve our biodiversity. So, in a situation like this where you're making a call out for ideas, it's all about coming to the table and putting it forward, because it might sound daft in your head, but actually there could be real, longevity to the idea.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, biodiversity, in its simplest terms, it's the amount of native species in an area, but it's also about that connectivity. Like if everybody had let their gardens grow and did rotational meadows, the pollinators can travel from one area to another in about 200 meters. So the more biodiversity we have and nature as it is, it'll benefit us long term. And also, we're trying to get the pesticide reduction down across the county as well, because they have a detrimental effect to the pollinators and to that landscape and our water.
Sometimes when we talk about biodiversity, it can feel like, well, that's for people who live in very rural areas. But can people who live in, apartment blocks or housing estates, can they get involved in this?
Oh, absolutely. You can grow trees and shrubs that are native. And the thing about native species is that they support other native species. So you can have your own ecosystem on a small patch of grass. Like, for example, if you sowed hawthorn, that can support 109 insect species. Or a willow tree can support 284 insects and 324 lichens. So our native species support loads of other things, which is biodiversity, rather than non-native species such as cherry laurel. That supports nothing. And that's the educational aspect that we're striving for, just to say, our own native species are going to be resilient with our climate. They're here for, thousands of millions of years. They're adapted to the Irish soils and the fauna, and that's where you'll have success, and you'll see the rewards, over time as your flowers or trees do grow.
Now, I know, you're in the early stages of this. This plan's not going to be published for a little while yet, but this period of public consultation, it is an important part of it.
Absolutely. So we're going out to a range of locations across Laois. Abbeyleix is on the 25th of September. We're going up to Commerce, Collection, Portlaoise and Portarlington. And we want to ascertain what changes have people seen in biodiversity and nature since they were a child. And the stories and conversations I've heard already, they're drastic. Our rivers used to be full of fish. The hedgerows were, blossoming, literally. And now we get, a lot of disconnects. People aren't out in nature. The rivers are practically empty of fish, and it's about bringing back that, well, look, this is not right. There's a shifting baseline syndrome, whereby people who were born maybe in the last decade or two, they'll think, well, nature is grand. That's what I've grown up with. But we go back further, things were a lot different in the countryside. So we're just trying to make sure people are aware of that, and see if we can get some community collaboration and awareness for people to love where they live and improve where they live. And, we'll all work together to try and make a difference over the lifetime of this plan, which will be 5 years.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I saw a ladybug. And they would have been plentiful when I was small. Small things like this, they do have significant impact on the environment, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Like ladybugs, they're important for an aphid predator. Like they're an aphid predator. So if you have fruit trees or willows, they will be there and they'll thrive. But again, if you don't sow the native species, or you cut them so that they can't flower for the long period of time, or if there's pesticides pesticides spread, and then you get this knock-on effect where there's no ladybirds, and then there's the food's not there for the birds to eat them, so that food web is really affected.
So Lisa, as we say, you're looking for people to get involved in the plan. If they want to find out, say, the dates and times of the events, or they want to just speak to you, what's the best way of getting in contact with you?
So the dates and times are on laois.ie. So if they put in the search box Laois Biodiversity Action Plan, We also have the events up on Facebook, and we'll be running some adverts in the papers and hopefully in the parish newsletters too. We're also contactable at biodiversity@laoiscoco.ie.
So biodiversity at laoiscoco.ie if you want to get involved in the creation of this new plan for the county. And as Lisa says, it will run for 5 years. So it is an important opportunity to have your say and to get involved. Biodiversity Officer for Laois County Council, Lisa Doyle, thank you very much for joining us on Let's Go Green.
Thank you, Aisling.
We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Well, if I said whiskey and sustainability, are they two words you'd put in the same sentence together? Well, perhaps not. But to find out what one local distillery is doing in their sustainability efforts, I'm joined by Martin Gorman of Tullamore Dew. Well, technically Grant, obviously, but Tullamore Dew. We're going to claim you, Martin. You're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks very much, Aisling. Great to be here.
Now, Martin, obviously now, just for public safety announcement and all of that, obviously we would encourage people to drink responsibly, and this is not an advertisement for an alcohol brand. You are, though, a local company, a local employer with, a very large footprint in Tullamore, it has to be said. And you have been making inroads in making your facility more environmentally minded overall in recent years. And I don't know, for listeners who maybe haven't seen the distillery in Tullamore, it is quite an impressive building, even just to see it from the roadway. So talk to us about, what exactly is there for people who aren't familiar.
Sure, Aisling, no problem at all. Yeah, the site itself is pretty extensive. We're sitting on probably about 150 acres, currently using about half of that acreage for distillery operations. So we have two distinct distilleries on site here, Pot and Malt Distillery, which was built and went into production in 2014. Our grain distillery then followed closely after that in 2017. We also have a bottling operation here on site. Bottling Hall also went into operation in 2017. We have our main offices here as well, and we also have extensive warehousing, currently 12 warehouses in production. So yeah, it is a quite extensive facility, and then obviously a lot of other ancillary buildings to support the distilleries themselves.
And then, how many people work there? How many people are going there roughly on a daily basis?
Yeah, sure, no problem at all. Yeah, so we approximately just over 100 people on site here at any given day between both distilleries and bottling and various other operations. So in around 100, 105 people daily.
So in the scheme of things, quite a large employer in the region. Why then, has sustainability been at the core of what you've done for a long time, or has this been a new journey? Where has it begun?
Sure. No, definitely has been, I suppose, a key thing for us here in the distillery since the distillery was, I suppose, in distillery terms, we were still quite young.
Yeah.
As in we only went into production in 2014. So even if we look at our first distillery, which went online in 2014, all the available technology at that time for sustainability, heat recovery was designed and put into that distillery. So in Grant's portfolio of distilleries, we're probably the most energy efficient and probably with the most modern technology. So certainly from the outset, it was designed and built using the most up-to-date energy efficiency and decarb technology. And we are continuing that year on year. We've added projects for heat recovery, reducing water usage. So within the Grants Group, we are the most efficient distillery within the group, given we are the youngest, so we should be the most efficient, but we certainly are the most efficient. So even from the get-go, it was one of our key drivers was efficiency and sustainability.
That, I would imagine, does make things easier, the fact that you were starting from scratch with that particular building. But the culture, the mindset, why make these efforts?
Yeah, no, good point. And also, it's obviously a huge financial piece as well. That's not say it's not, it is, because the more efficient you are, obviously the the more cost effective you are as well. But look, one of our values as a company is be sustainable is one of our huge values, and we're constantly looking at that from either energy efficiency, also biodiversity on site, reducing our precious resource use such as water. So yeah, it's one of our key pillars here within the business. So it's always something we're focused on, looking to improve, always looking at the latest technologies. How can we implement them here in our distillery and any of our processes? And also, I suppose company-wide as well, we would have an extended engineering team, and we'd be all feeding into that and feeding off each other's ideas. So trying to stay at that cutting edge, I think, is what we're doing,
And then, you've mentioned, say biodiversity there. You've got, as you say, a large land footprint. So what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, I suppose we have an extensive amount of warehousing on site. So we have a lot of green areas between our warehousing. We've also dedicated a section of our land bank to the 100 Million Trees project. So we've set aside a couple of acres there where we've had a company donate or supply saplings, and we've a couple of 100,000 trees grown there. And also around the site, we've a lot of trees, shrubs, flowers, a lot of biodiversity on the site. We have a couple of ponds where we recover rainwater, and they are a huge source of biodiversity. We see an awful lot of insects and birds around those areas. So we're really promoting it where we can at all places, on all areas of the site.
Does that though, because you're producing something that humans are going to consume, and even just by virtue of the fact of where you are, you're next door to basically, woods and forestry, and there's wild deer there. And, so how do you manage all of that? Because obviously you want to make sure that none of it gets inside the buildings.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, we have rigorous regulations here. All the buildings are obviously constructed to not let anything into the building when we are in production. All vessels, pipework are sealed, stuff like that. But yeah, no, I mean, if we look around the site, we have lots of hares, rabbits, a lot of wildlife going around there, because it is a quite extensive site, and it's nice to see that. But no, we're definitely of that mindset to improve our biodiversity. I say we have a biodiversity plan which we have drawn up, and we're working through that at the moment as well.
And then I know you've got quite a significant solar project ongoing as well.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a very exciting one for us. It's our first, I suppose, venture into solar in the Grants Group. So just a few small numbers on it. So we're about 9 acres of solar panels, just over 4,000 solar panels in total. That will give us roughly 30% of our electricity requirements. So it's a lovely project. Just for context, then, that will reduce about 750 tons of carbon per year, equivalent of sowing 53,000 evergreen trees. So yeah, it's a lovely project, and really exciting for us to see how we utilise it as best we can, because distillery operations, we're trying to, I suppose, tailor our distillery operations to maximise our solar output and try and use as much green energy as possible. So yeah, really excited about that project, and it's just about to go online in the next few weeks. So yeah, real tinge of excitement around the place, yeah.
And is that kind of like a solar farm, on some of the land, or is it on the roofs of the buildings?
No, it's all on ground mounted. Yeah, no, good point. We had looked at warehouse roofing as well as an option, but we decided against it. Yeah, we have an extensive land bank here, so it is on our own land to the side of the warehousing. I say about roughly 9 acres on our own land. Yeah.
Fantastic. So it's something that is forming part of the landscape as well. Now, look, you've said it yourself, this all takes a massive investment, and by virtue of being part of a broader group, I'm not going to say it's easier. It's easy to get the investment, but it's easier. There's a source of funding there. For other, manufacturers in the region who you want to do their bit, having started down this journey, it can be overwhelming. So what would you recommend, as to where people should start with all of this?
Yeah, sure. That's a good point, Aisling. Yeah, well, I suppose we are, I would say, lucky in a way that, we do have a size that does help us go after these projects, maybe easier than on smaller business. A good point, absolutely. But look, there's so much stuff there and so much technology coming on stream, and There's a lot of help there with grants, et cetera, et cetera. So I suppose it's really tailoring it to your own particular business. I wouldn't say cost would be a constraint, because there's so many small things people can do from the point of view even a bit of biodiversity, different types of technologies that they can implement, even from the point of view of reducing water usage, recycling. So there's a huge amount, given this, given whatever scale the business is at, there's a huge opportunity there to even make a start, and you never know where it goes from there.
Is it important then, because even the way you've been speaking about it, I can hear you mentally divide it up. It's not that, okay, we're trying to solve climate change, but we've got a water project, we've a recycling project. You've broken them down into something that feels a bit more manageable.
Exactly. No, that's a fair point. Yeah, no, that's, I suppose, a key thing that we've done here is probably focus on areas like that where we can make a difference, as in definitely precious resources like water, which we use extensively here in the distillery as a massive ingredient in our product. And so we've worked extensively to try and reduce our water usage, recover rainwater from our warehouse roofs. So we're currently running at about 25 to 30% of our water is recovered rainwater, which sent back into our filtration system and used in our processes. So we're constantly looking at that. Where can we make a significant difference and really move the needle rather than just, maybe a token gesture,
And then, there is, I think, and I hear it all the time in my own work, where a concern that businesses have that they're nearly afraid to discuss these efforts that they're making because of, oh, sure, you're not doing this, so therefore you're not perfect. So how can you claim to be an environmentally friendly company? And I know there's a term for it, it's greenwashing. But, in your experience, has it been of benefit to be able to share the story and to talk more about what you're doing and being more open in it?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I suppose it is a fear for some companies, that you could be accused of greenwashing and stuff like that. But I suppose that people have to be brave enough to, about what they're doing, have that conversation. The recent Decarb event was a fantastic example of that, where so many businesses, be it big, small, we had Bord na Móna there as well, one of the bigger ones, and they was very forthcoming in what they were doing and what they're trying to achieve, same as ourselves. But look, I think, people have to look past that and see, it is a genuine effort by, whoever is, they're putting themselves out there to show what they're doing. Like even our own solar farm, that's just, we are doing that, and it's for our own use. And we may, at some stage in the future, if we are producing some excess, maybe sell back into the grid rather than not use the electricity. So, but no, that is a good shout. And I think more and more companies are coming forward and having that discussion and putting out there what they're doing,
Well, Martin Gorman was one of the speakers at the Tullamore DZ decarbonising zone earlier in the summer. And and I know I mentioned it at the time, but if you haven't checked out the Tullamore DZ website, go Google it and look at it, because actually, like Martin says, and I think you'd share this, it was a great day and it was really hopeful. And it was great to have a discussion around climate change and for it to be hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a very good event, very well put together by Offaly County Council. I'd say very professional, really put a lot of effort into it. Huge range of speakers, as I said, from really large companies to smaller companies to individuals, Gas Networks Ireland. Everyone got involved, and I think everyone, to be fair, came with the same mindset. It was, how can we solve this? How can we maybe eat the elephant one bite at a time? No one's going to come with this big silver bullet, but it's a lot of people, a lot of companies just, changing that mindset and just fearing what they're doing. And I thought it was fantastic, to be fair. There was a lot of honesty and a lot of stuff people weren't even aware that were going on. Even myself, as some of the speakers and some of the companies, I wasn't aware of some of the stuff that was actually happening. And even some of the smaller companies were really leading the way on on sustainability and things they were doing. It was fantastic, and hopefully it's a lead on to bigger things. Absolutely, and it's great to see more positivity coming out of the Midlands. Well, listen, Martin Gorman of Tullamore Dew, thank you very much for joining us on Let's Go Green. Lovely, and it was a pleasure talking to Aisling. Thank you. We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Well, Before we wrap up the show for this week, I wanted to bring you a new report which has been published in the journal Nature. Nature is a scientific journal, so it's usually quite interesting, but it's a good source of information around environmental issues in particular. So according to this new study that's been published in Nature, scientists now can directly connect the emissions from major oil and gas companies to deadly heat waves around the world. So this is a significant development. The fact that we've known from scientists for many years that this has been happening, they can now make the direct link based on scientific fact. So this new report, it doesn't just say that fossil fuels cause climate change in general. It can link the emission from specific corporations to the increased likelihood of extreme heat events. And of course, we know that in recent decades, tens of thousands of people have died in heat wave related events across the world. We know that our health suffers in extreme temperatures, and particularly for those who are vulnerable, the elderly, people with disability and young children and infants, they really struggle in extreme temperatures. According to the research team, carbon emissions from the world's biggest oil companies have made dozens of major heat waves more intense and more frequent. They're the same heat waves that have devastated communities in Europe, Asia and North America, leading in spikes in death, crop failures and infrastructure breakdowns. The study is particularly significant because of its legal and political implications. Campaigners have argued for a long time now that fossil fuel companies should be held accountable for their role in fueling the climate crisis. So now campaigners, governments, legal experts have evidence that can actually prove a direct line of responsibility, one that could be used in future court cases. So in theory, governments could use this research and use it as part of a class action suit against a specific oil company to get them to pay for the damage, to pay for compensation to people who've suffered health issues, to get them to rebuild infrastructure that's collapsed as a result, or, perhaps help with reinvigorating, reviving land that's been damaged as a result as well. Scientists behind the study have emphasised that while governments still have the main responsibility for climate policy, this kind of evidence will strengthen the case for corporate liability, and it underscores and emphasises the urgency of phasing out fossil fuels, given that we know that every additional tonne of carbon dioxide that's released into the world adds to the risks that we face. It is a significant report. As I say, it is published in the journal Nature. I should say that the report has been published by several groups. So a group of scientists have come together and they've been supported by a number of different institutions, particularly ETH in Zurich. So this is a piece of global research from multiple authors across the globe. So that also adds to the veracity of it. The report has quite stark graphics that go with it and graphs, but it is particularly interesting. And I think, for people who've been campaigning on these matters for decades now, in some ways, this report is proving what they've been saying all along. And yes, it gives them evidence, but also it must be rather disheartening to see that they have in fact been right all along, and it's still happening. So it will be interesting to see if this report is taken seriously, particularly at a political level. Just to go back to a piece that we had earlier in this week's episode of Let's Go Green, we spoke with Lisa Doyle, who is the Biodiversity Officer for Laois County Council. Now, biodiversity action plans are government mandated plans that every local authority has to come up with for their area. Lisa Doyle and her colleagues are currently working on creating the new plan for the next 5 years for County Laois. And As I discussed with Lisa, this is now your opportunity to have your say and to contribute to it, put forward any ideas, even just to learn what's happening in relation to biodiversity regeneration across County Laois. So if you'd like to get involved or find out more, you can contact Lisa at Laois County Council in Áras an Conde in Portlaoise. You can also email her on biodiversity@laoiscoco.ie, or you can check out Laois County Council's social media pages where they will have the details, and laois.ie where the dates for the public information sessions will also be shared. My thanks, as always, to our contributors to this week's edition of the show. This is your reminder that if perhaps you may have missed a part of this week's show or even a previous episode, don't forget that every episode of Let's Go Green is available as a podcast. You can listen to it on midlands103.com under the podcast section, or on your preferred podcast app if you choose to listen to it on Spotify or Apple. Please, if you're feeling generous, write us a review or give us a star rating. It actually really helps if you can do that for us, because that means the higher the rating on these podcast apps, the more likely the app will be showcased to other people who are interested in the issues that we discuss here on the show, and it'll pop up in their feeds. It's just like a social media platform, basically. So if you can give us a star rating or write a review, particularly in Apple, it would be appreciated. And also, if you listen to us on your preferred podcast app, you can hit the subscribe or follow button and get that notification each and every time a new episode drops. And of course, and I say this each and every week, but it's true, Let's Go Green is a community-driven programme. So please get in contact with me if there is an item that you would like us to discuss on the show, or if there's an effort being made in your community that you would like to get showcased here on Let's Go Green. If there's a climate action hero in your community, please do get in contact with me, because I'd love to be able to, well, give them an on-air pat on the back, if you will. So if you'd like to suggest an item for the show, please get in contact with me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Aisling O'Rourke. You can email me on hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie, or of course you can go to midlands103.com and contact the station directly, and the team will put you in contact with me then. I'm afraid that is all we have time for on this week's episode of Let's Go Green. I hope that you've enjoyed the show. I know I enjoy putting it together each and every week. Stay safe, have a great week, and I'll be back same time next week with another edition of Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.